Welcome to the Assist Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Schwartz, and we're back after a little bit of a break. Life got in the way last week, and I've been we've had this one scheduled for a couple weeks for that first episode back, and it is the great Lucas Wiggins joining me to break down all of the massive deals in NFL free agency because a lot has happened. Bill Belichick decided to spend every penny he had, which is really weird for the Patriots themselves. The Bucks, Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Bucks reloaded. There's just a ton of stuff going on, and so Lucas is here now to break it down with me. Lucas, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. You know, it's a nice Monday here. School's calmed down a little bit this week compared to last week.
Thank God.
Yeah, so nearing the end of the semester, so it's almost April. It's really weird.
It's really just like one step closer to the NFL draft. That's all. That's all that really matters.
And I've been mentally preparing myself for the Lions to not have the chance to select Jamar Chase on my birthday because the first round's on my birthday this year, which sometimes happens, and I get disappointed. And I mean, the Dolphins are picking 6th, and Lions at the 7th pick, and I'm just waiting for the Dolphins to take Jamar Chase and make me really upset.
Just waiting to never see Seattle pick a good first rounder, like ever.
Dude,
it's always more exciting the second and third round for me than it is the first round.
Well, they don't even have a first round pick this year, right? Because of the Jamal Adams trade.
Yeah. Yeah. It is what it is, I guess.
Well, yeah, I remember they took an inside linebacker, I think last year, that was supposed to be picked in the 3rd round or something, mock draft-wise. Jordan Brooks, right, was the name?
Yeah. Well, okay, to be fair, he's actually really good. He sits – it's kind of hard to get playing time when you're behind Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright. Like, probably, in my opinion, some of the best duos to play, like duo middle linebackers to play in a very long time, but I digress. But when we had injuries and stuff like that, and he stepped in, he's done really well overall.
There you go. Pete Carroll does know what he's doing, as you know, the Russell Wilson controversy this offseason definitely shows. In addition,
Jesus.
Okay, so I mentioned at the top, free agency, a lot of different things, even the Jaguars, future home of Trevor Lawrence, spending a lot of money. Is there a place, a team, or just a signing you would like to start with that really, caught your eye? Because there's a lot here that I'm going to criticize, but these different teams. But is there a place you would like to start with the show?
I mean, if you want to go with my bias, we could definitely start in the NFC West and go through all that shenanigans that's happened in the offseason.
Yes.
Because there was a lot that's happened in the NFC West in particular.
Yeah, so mentioned I've already talked about the Matthew Stafford trade on here for the Rams. They kind of sat out free agency, mainly because they're up against the cap in an insane way. The Cardinals end up signing A.J. Green, also J.J. Watt, so they're reunited with DeAndre Hopkins. And then your Seahawks are really, just having a really interesting time with everything.
Well, they're up against the cap too,
which
was the biggest thing. So it was like trying to make some of the really harder decisions. So, I mean, but like bringing back Carlos Dunlap was a huge decision because it was kind of like they were kind of in between Dunlap and Jaron Reed because those were like our two main guys up in the front who were going to be making the difference. So it was like, okay, do we want to let Jaron Reed go and let him go into free agency, or are we going to try to sign Dunlap? So they ended up signing Dunlap again, which I don't remember. I think it was a 2-year deal on.
Yeah. And I also want to say the Rams did sign Leonard Floyd for 4 years, $64 million, which I have a larger point about edge rushers later on because I think these deals are ridiculous. So the Rams did get one key free agent as well.
Yeah.
So.
And another thing too is like kind of interesting that so the 49ers they ended up re-signing a lot of people too, because I had quite a few people are going into free agency. their disgusting fullback of Kyle Juszczyk. They re-signed him, which I don't understand. Like, it's funny because you forget that fullback's a position in football sometimes, and then you get a guy like Kyle Juszczyk that just comes in and just literally does it all for some reason.
Yeah.
He's like a second running back that's also a tight end. You're just like, that doesn't make sense.
Yep. There's been a lot of talk this year about void contracts and stuff like that. You know, the voidable years with the salary cap going down and everything like that. Especially seeing in Taysom Hill's 4-year, $140 million extension that's basically fake. Juszczyk's another one that's interesting because his deal that was reported was 5 years, $27 million, and only 9.6 of that is guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, part of that too is like, I think part of that is, I mean, I don't really get into the logistics of like how people are getting around like cap space and through the years and stuff like that with like guaranteed money, not guaranteed money or whatever, and how they can play with that. But I think that's like part of a strategy as well, is to just only guarantee so much so that way you can kind of play around with the cap in years that you need to.
Yeah, a lot of it is converting salary into bonuses, and then it like pushes it out into further years. That's what the Saints have done for a while, and I think the Bucks, are also doing that with Brady right now. So then you mentioned San Francisco also re-signing Trent Williams. We figured this would all happen, but 6 years, $138.70 million guaranteed. That's a big contract. And they also just moved up to the number 3 pick in the draft over the weekend.
Oh my God!
So I mean, so now that we know Jimmy G is not going to be for long. So basically, I mean, we're getting out of different teams, but the NFC West is probably the biggest division ripe for change, and it has been. It's been, you're going to have 2 starting new quarterbacks in there, and Stafford, and whether it's Trey Lance or Justin Fields for the Niners, I'm not sure. I don't think anybody's really sure how most teams rank those 2.
Well, in the 49ers, they re-signed Josh Rosen too, so he's still on the team technically.
Chosen Rosen.
So I mean, like that. I mean, although not a great pick, still technically a pick for like the quarterback spot as well. So yeah, it's going to be weird, and it's pretty funny too because the Seahawks actually ended up picking up like quite a few of like clientele within the same division too, because we ended up getting our new offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, from the Rams, who, God, I hope he does a better job than Schottenheimer, because I hated that man.
A lot of people did, I think.
The problem is like, when your whole game plan, right, is to run the ball twice, go for a 7-yard pass, and then a deep pass every single, like, 3 downs that you get, it's just obviously it's going to work for 5 games, which is why we had the best 5 games that's why Wilson had the best 5 games of his career, and then it just literally went to shit afterwards because teams were like, oh, this is all they're doing. Okay, cool, I know how to play that.
Right,
goes down the shitter.
I mean, with all these, you're very intimate with this division, being a Seattle Seahawks fan. Mm-hmm. So if you had to say, and we can include the Stafford trade and the Niners trade in here too if you want in the draft, like who coming out of this offseason, so far at least there's still some free agents to be signed and such like that, and obviously the draft. Who came out of this offseason most improved, or who are you now, maybe not most scared of, but were you like, crap, they're going to pose a problem to Seattle out of LA, Arizona, and San Francisco?
I definitely think it's LA. Because the thing is LA has always had a really good team, and I always have said like their weakest point has always been Jared Goff, and getting rid of him and adding in Stafford, who mind you I still think is a really good quarterback. I would easily put Stafford in top 10 in the league personally, but when you have not a whole lot around you on the Lions over the past 5-6 years, then it's kind of hard to do much, especially when you're in a division with the Packers and the Vikings and all them.
Yeah, I mean, I will defend Matthew Stafford until the grave. That man, I mean, he had no help from either the defense, from the Detroit Lions, the running game. I mean, there's a stat that the Lions hadn't ran the ball for 100 yards in a game in 6 years or something like that, which is ridiculous.
Oh, my God.
So I agree with you. I think it is the Rams because the Rams were stuck in this position where they had, traded their picks for Jalen Ramsey. They had made all these signings where these next 2 years they have to win the Super Bowl basically. And Goff wasn't going to make it. I mean, he just wasn't. And I think Stafford, at least, and people will say, well, can you win a Super Bowl in the NBA, especially with the NBA title, with this guy as your best player? And I mean, the Wentz-Nick Foles combo won the Eagles a Super Bowl. So it's like because Stafford fit that threshold, he smashes it. So yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I think the Rams are, possibly the second best team in the NFC. I mean, depending how you feel about the Bucs, Packers, and then the Seahawks possibly putting past their issues this offseason as well.
Yeah, I saw a thing. This was about a week or so ago. I think it was the NBC one, but it was like giving the odds of who is going to win the NFC title for next year. And all four of the NFC West teams were within the top 8 of the NFC. So I mean, our whole division's within the top 50%. It's like for like numbers wise of what the prediction's going to be, which is a little insane, which is another reason why I still think that our division has been one of the hardest, if not the hardest, over the past 5-6 years, just because it's been so competitive, like year in, year out.
Especially with Pittsburgh, I think is going to regress this season. I know Roethlisberger's coming back, but that doesn't really. That's a whole other issue. They sent 3 playoff teams to the AFC playoffs last year. I think the NFC West is really primed for that this year, especially with I think San Francisco is really intriguing because they kind of portrayed their plans, one for Jimmy G, but also that they're almost going for a 1-year, 2-year reset in a way after their year from hell last year, and they're just going to go up, get the quarterback, cut ties with Jimmy G. But I think especially look at the other NFC divisions. I mean, the Saints are taking a step back. I mean, the NFC North is probably a 1 playoff team, maybe 2 with Minnesota. I mean, Chicago, I'm sorry, Andy Dalton. I mean, that's another discussion we need to have.
Oh, my God.
And the NFC East is still, I mean, Dallas maybe with Dak Prescott will be better, but other than that, Philadelphia is kind of rebuilding now and stuff like that. So I think it easily could be a 3-team in the playoff division, especially with the 7 teams now in the postseason.
Well, and theoretically, the whole division could technically make it, because now that there's 3 wild card spots, you would have the one winner of the division, and then technically if everybody's record aligned, they could basically take the rest of the wild card spots. But I was talking with my dad, and best case scenario, because it's a whole numbers game, right, with record. So the only way, or not the only way, but the easiest way that would even be possible was if everybody went 1-1 with each other within the division. So they would have 4 losses automatically, 3 losses. And then they would basically have to win out the rest of their season with -1 or 2.
Right.
Which seems insane just in itself. So it's for 4 teams to do that is kind of crazy.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to think, because, I mean, I think San Francisco is kind of looking at the division saying, okay, we're going to take a step back for a year or 2, intentionally, with, I assume you don't trade up what they traded up to go from 12 to 3 to not select a quarterback. So, and what I was going to say, too, and this, I'll do this later on with NFL draft coverage coming in April, I'm big on Justin Fields over Trey Lance. People are really questioning Fields, and I don't get it as a Michigan fan watching Fields. I thought he was awesome, and I mean, there's been a lot of issues, with they're pointing to the Northwestern game in the Big Ten championship where he really struggled. I just think he's a really good player, and I think he's a baller who's going to be really good in the NFL. So if they pick him third pick, he could be ready to come in year 2, next year. I mean, I'm sure he'll play this year, upcoming year, but he'll come in year 2. Ready to fit in a quarterback-friendly scheme with Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he was one play away from winning the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, which seems a little crazy if you really think about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
I would say unless their defense plays really well, it gets them to 8-8, and then the rest of the NFC teams crater. We'll see. But Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm going to say it now. He's going to the Patriots, right? And that's the transition to the Patriots point. I mean, this is all set up for Bill Belichick to trade for Jimmy G now, right?
Yeah, you would think.
Because based on what I've heard, is that Belichick really loved Jimmy G back then and didn't want to trade him.
Yeah, but I think it kind of ran into the same issue where it was like a cap thing. And they're like, well, we're not getting rid of Brady anytime soon. So they figured, why not?
Yeah.
Say they got a little bit. I don't remember if he went to free agency or if they traded him, but
I think it was a second-round pick, maybe, like a high second-rounder, if I recall correctly. Someone could fact-check us. Nobody will.
Nobody will. We're not Joe Rogan. We don't have a fact checker.
No, we don't. I don't have just a little intern to help me out.
Where's Laura?
Yeah. I have to make her listen to this now. So I was going through all the moves the Patriots made, right? Because they made a lot of them. My question to you is, how quickly did you arrive that it was a bad decision, like in totality? Like, how long did it take for you to get over the maybe Belichick is doing something I don't know thing before you're just like, wait a minute, he gave out 2 massive contracts to 2 tight ends, that one of which always gets hurt and the other one which is pretty good, but still you don't give out 2 free agency contracts to tight ends. How long did it take that gap for you to occur?
I don't know, man. Like it really just felt like, sorry to the Patriots fans out there, but it really just felt like Belichick had like a mental lapse and just started signing papers. And because he's Belichick and the Patriots, nobody in his staff questioned him. His son was just kind of sitting there like, do what you want, Dad. And then just, I don't know, man. Like, they're not, and like you said, they're not bad. They're not bad players by any means, but it's like, I think what's happening is that their scheme and how they play was really big on having a solid tight end, which is understandable when you have a player like Gronkowski. But you also have to have a bond with your quarterback like Brady and Gronkowski did. Because at the end of the day, you can have 2 really good players. If they don't click, they don't click. That's just how sports work in general. You probably would never be able to put Messi and Ronaldo on the same pitch and have them be the best duo to ever live, just because they're 2 completely different play styles. That's just how it is. And I feel the same with, like, he's trying to get back to, like, I feel like he's trying to get back to this, like, old scheme with how he tried to run stuff with when, he was doing well and winning all these Super Bowls, and which is fair. Obviously, if something was working, you want to try to get back to how it was working. But I feel like the game is just ever so changing that he's not going to be able to do that without adapting.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And for those of us who maybe aren't caught up on all the signings, this is all of them, so I'm going to go through it here. Kyle Van Noy, 2 for 13, the inside linebacker. That one I actually like the most out of all of them, as an aside. Jalen Mills, defensive back, for 4 years, $24 million. Cam Newton, 1 for 5. Then you have Hunter Henry, the tight end, 3 for 25 guaranteed. Jonnu Smith, another tight end, 4 for 31.25 guaranteed. 31.25, guaranteed. And then Nelson Aguilar, 2 for 22, which seems ludicrous based on how the wide receiver market developed.
Oh my God.
And
I forgot they signed him.
Yep. And then, of course, the edge rusher, Matthew Judon, 4 for 56 with 32 guarantee, which, I mean, I'm going to have a bigger point about edge rushers, but I've never seen Belichick overpay for an edge rusher either, which is interesting. But overall, I mean, the two tight ends are bad enough, but the Jalen Mills signing is ridiculous. I have an Eagles fan in my life, a close friend, and I mean, I don't think I could text him, but I don't think he has anything positive to say about Jalen Mills.
I mean, yeah, I don't. Well, same with Aguilar, man. He was always hurt.
Yep.
He was always hurt.
It seems like Aguilar's the type of guy that you sign for like a $2 million. Belichick would sign for $2 million and he'd play really well and then go get this contract for somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard. It's, again, I don't understand. I mean, maybe there's a greater plan for what is to come. But I just don't see how that works out for him, honestly.
And I think the problem is, too, like the AFC East is not a cakewalk anymore. I mean, Buffalo is strongly favored to win the division, as they should be, because I think they had a good amount of re-signing, too. And then Miami went 10-6 last year with compromised Tua. I mean, really. And they're going to bet on him, I think, again.
It's magic. What do you mean?
It's true. He did very well. So now he's in Washington, actually, which is interesting. So it's a tough division now. And, like, I look at the totality of these moves. Like I said, I like Van Noy. The Judon contract wasn't terrible, so the defense should be a bit better. But then you look, okay, so your offensive weapons are, Cam Newton, N'Keal Harry again. You're going to have Sony Michel still back there and Aguilar, and then 2 tight end sets and Hunter Henry, who I love as a player, but is always hurt. Like, doesn't move the needle for me past 7-9, 8-8.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, it's like the other thing too is like I don't think Cam Newton's all that great. Personally, I don't think he's ever really been that great. Excuse me. I think he's had really good seasons and people always argue, oh, well, he won MVP and he set all these records in Carolina. And I said, okay, well, my thing is like, tell me one, like, I can't think of a really good quarterback that's ever come out of Carolina. Personally.
You mean with the Panthers?
And yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like for him to go and break all the excuse me, Jesus. For him to go in and break all those records, it's like, okay, well, the bar was set pretty low. So.
Oh, you're talking about team records. Okay, I see what you mean. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
As far as like team records, because I think that's like kind of like the big argument that I hear from people. It's like, oh, well, he went into the Panthers and he did so much and he brought him to a Super Bowl and this and that. And then, like, I don't know. Like, you watch his Super Bowl performance, and he's too scared to dive onto a football that's fumbled. But that's a separate debate, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and just last year, he was just bad. He was explicitly bad as a quarterback. So that's why I feel like they're going to end up making a move here for Jimmy G at some point. I know the Niners can cut him without any cap issues from a special release. So I feel like that might be a landing spot there for him, especially with the quarterback carousel not really taking place as fast as we thought it would in the offseason. It just feels weird. I mean, I guess that's just the summary. I know we kind of said it again and again. Like, it feels very un-Patriot-like. And to be honest, I don't feel bad dunking on Patriots fans, with this being bad or making fun of them, because you guys have had enough success. It's time for the rest of the league. Detroit still won't have success, but at least for the other teams, they can have a good time now.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe there's a bigger plan.
Could be.
And for Patriots fans, you better hope there is.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of dunking on teams, the Chicago Bears fans. we were. I'm going to set the stage here. We were together, at Topgolf. Drive Shack. Excuse me. The Andy Dalton signing had already been released for a couple days, and the Chicago Bears posted a picture of him with the QB1 label, and it just felt like a meme for the fans. Just be like, yeah, we don't care what you say. I mean, this is just the most perfect signing, right, for the memes. This is the most beautiful signing, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It has to be. Like, I don't know. It's just so funny to me because, Andy Dalton had to go in and play for Dak because he got hurt. And then he goes and gets hurt himself. But when Andy Dalton was in, he didn't do all that much. He didn't bring the team to these great heights. So, for the Bears to go out looking to get a quarterback, mind you, looking to trade for Russell Wilson, which would have cost like 4 picks, 2 or 3 of them being first rounders, and then also 2 players, which was one of the speculated trade options that I guess, and that it came across my phone one day. But you go from all these Bear fans basically getting their hopes up that Wilson was going to go over there, and then all of a sudden you get signed to Andy Reid, who has been stuck in Cincinnati for years, got to play in Dallas, and then got hurt.
Yep. Yeah, and especially because, too, there were rumors that maybe they'll try to trade up. Yeah, maybe get... I mean, I'm not that enamored with Mac Jones as a quarterback prospect, but maybe try to get Mac Jones or something like that just to get some fresh flavor in there. Or, maybe in day 2 you take Kyle Trask from Florida or something like that. I mean, they're paying him $10 million guaranteed, so that's not backup quarterback money for this year. So they're rolling with Dalton. I mean, I guess, is it just better to swap out somebody for Mitch Trubisky, and at least it's not the Mitch Trubisky jokes again? I don't even know. I can't believe this was a playoff team last year also. It breaks my brain.
Yeah, I feel like that just shows you that the bottom half of the NFC was just really, really bad.
And it's going to be again.
The top half was really good, and the bottom half was just really bad.
Yeah, because after you get past Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Seattle, the Rams, and the Cardinals could move up to that tier as well. They missed the playoffs last year. Maybe this is the year forward for them. I mean, and then maybe Dallas with a healthy Dak. So that's 5.
Yeah.
And then what? Kirk Cousins, Minnesota?
Yeah, you have an inconsistent Vikings team. You have a Falcons team that, Matty Ice has been the best thing since sliced bread over there, and they just got up Todd Gurley, who didn't manage to break his knees this season.
Everybody...
You have the Giants that are consistently negative every season. I don't know.
Well, great transition there. Because the Giants also went deep on free agency. They signed the number 1 wide receiver in this year's class, Kenny Galladay, 4 years,
yes.
$72 million. They also got Kyle Rudolph, formerly of the Vikings, 2 years, $14 million. And they also re-signed Leonard Williams for 3 years and $45 million guaranteed. So they're setting this year up. If you're, Dave Gettleman, Giants GM, you're setting this year up as the referendum on Daniel Jones, right? He's about to enter his 3rd season, I believe. He hasn't progressed maybe as much as you want. So, he's number 1 wideout now. Truly, he still has Sterling Shepard. He still has those type of weapons. Saquon Barkley will be back this year. But
if he can ever stay healthy.
Right. Very true. My question to you, though, Lucas, is that don't we already know it, Daniel Jones?
What do you mean?
That he's not a good quarterback. He's not a franchise quarterback. They're setting this year up to give him the weapons to show he can be, kind of what Buffalo tried doing with Josh Allen. But Josh Allen actually showed me a couple things, in his first 2 years. Daniel Jones, I'm just kind of all right, I don't see that much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. I definitely think that I don't know. I definitely don't think Daniel Jones is the answer. And giving him a bunch of weapons isn't going to make him better.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it will. Who knows? Because like realistically, like if we do go back to the Josh Allen comparison, right? He was bottom 3 quarterbacks in most major quarterback stats in his first 2 seasons, and then he instantly jumped up to top 3 in his 3rd season because he had some support around him. So I mean, it could happen, but like you said, you kind of saw a spark out of Josh Allen. You never really see that spark in Daniel Jones.
So you're not selling all your Daniel Jones stock yet. Then that's what you're saying.
No, I don't think it's a terrible move, but I definitely don't think he's the answer, especially with all the quarterback freaking shuffling that's going on. I feel like there was a better way to go about it.
Right.
But
very true. Very true. So that I'm looking at.
Hey, they can sign Deshaun Washington.
Oh goodness! Well, what a situation that's become with now all of the civil lawsuits that have been filed that all say the same exact thing. So you kind of have to really obviously take them seriously. I know some people dismiss those type of cases out hand, which is very, very disappointing among society. Yeah. But I mean, even that it's become such an issue now that teams, I believe, are waiting, because I think the Texans' intention was probably to trade him before the draft, and even a team like Miami was really rumored to be in there, and they said, nope, we're going to roll with Tua, and we're going to do a couple moves in the draft here, and we're going to keep doing that, rolling with that, which is really interesting now.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's really been a huge hurt to the Texans and like their plans and stuff like that with how everything's played out.
Right, and obviously to Watson losing a lot of leverage himself too. So I thought I was pretty confident that Watson would be going to Miami. I was pretty sure of that. Now I have no clue.
Yeah.
No clue. So it'll be interesting to see where he ends up playing in the fall. Something else, Kansas City got decimated by Tampa Bay's defensive line, right, in the Super Bowl. So they went out and gave the former Patriots guard, Joe Thuney, a ton of money, and also brought Kyle Long, I believe, out of retirement, actually. So they completely reshuffled their offensive line. I mean, whether it was needed after one game or not, I'm not so sure. But that's an interesting thing there for Kansas City, trying to reload on their... can we talk about edge rushers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because all of these guys, so, I mean, I already mentioned Williams, I already mentioned Judon. Bud Dupree on the edge, going to Tennessee. Or, sorry, it's Tennessee from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Carl Lawson to the Jets. Hendrickson from New Orleans to the Bengals. Leonard Floyd, we already talked about, to the Rams. Shaq Barrett, which I feel like was the best one out of all of these, back to the Bucs. Made a lot of sense. He had Ngakoue, I can't say his last name, from the Ravens to Las Vegas, which is still so weird. I still write Oakland in my notes. I got to fix that.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
And then Romeo Okwara staying with Detroit for 3 years. Every time I see edge rush numbers, and maybe it's because I'm still scarred from the Trey Flowers signing that the Lions did from the Patriots a couple of years ago, I just feel like they're so inflated. Like, I look at Dupree, Hendrickson, Lawson's is okay, and Floyd, I just see overpay. 100% for production that wasn't really there, or that was there for one season.
Yeah. I don't know, like, you would... I mean, as much as they're supposed to be kind of be like those, like your guys that gets into the back line, right? They're supposed to be in the backfield more than anybody else, just because of how their position works. You don't see a lot of teams doing it. Like there's very few teams that are being able to successfully do that. I mean, you have your Joey Bosa's, you have your. I'm drawing so many blanks right now. Oh my god! But you know what I'm saying. You have all your big guys that sit on the edge and they get in the backfield like it's nobody's business. But then you have everybody else that just have marginal edge rushers, and it's just another piece of the puzzle just to complete a defense, not necessarily an outstanding part.
Yeah, and I guess to your point, you never are going to see Joey Bosa on the market, or a Nick Bosa even for the Niners, or TJ Watt for the Steelers. Like, they're not going to hit the market. They won't let them because those guys are so valuable. And even a JJ Watt for the Texans in his prime, of course.
Yeah.
So I guess when I see these numbers come through that are $17, $18 million a year for an edge rusher, I wince. Because I'm just like, well, if he was really that good and disruptive on his own, right, to earn $18 million a year, in a flat cap, no less, year, right, then they wouldn't have let him go. I don't know. That maybe I'm being too harsh on these teams, but it just doesn't seem like it's a recipe for success. I think there's a market. Like I'm not upset with the Okwara signing for the Lions. That was $12 million a year because I feel like that's pretty reasonable based on the $180 million cap I believe it's at. But
Yeah.
I just think when you're given Dupree, especially Dupree is a good example. This is 17, 18 million a year when he's playing opposite TJ Watt, who is one of the best edge rushers in the league. I just don't know.
Yeah. It's hard.
So, but I will also not profess to being an edge rusher expert. So, but I mean, I think it's pretty clear, when you see someone like Myles Garrett versus somebody opposite, those guys are game wreckers. So that's just my argument. And like the Shaq Barrett one has actually a lot of money guaranteed, which he's obviously earned after the last 2 years of play for the Buccaneers. So that'll be that one. I'm curious to see how it plays out, to see with obviously with the Bucs basically reloading and Brady restructuring his contract so they could keep everybody. So yeah. I'm not sure exactly how that one will go.
Who knows?
What other teams or deals caught your eye? Looking through the different signings over the last week or two.
Hit on a lot of them. Galladay one that I was going to mention. Bucks re-signing Shaq Barrett.
Yep.
The Jets did sign Corey Davis.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think he's going to do really well over there, honestly. Now, whether or not Sam Darnold can throw a ball to him, that's a different story. But we'll see. Another weird one is that the Bills signed Mitch Trubisky, and I'm just like that. I mean, I guess they got him for cheap. I think they gave him a year for $2.5 million or something like that. But it's still just why?
I guess for the backup spot. So who knows?
Yeah. One thing that we're talking about, like meme signings earlier. It's kind of funny. Shaquille Griffin, though, as much as it hurts me to say, as both a Seattle fan and a UCF fan, but 3 years for $40 million, that's a lot. That's a lot. Granted, he did fine. I would say he is above average cornerback, but to get paid, almost $13.5 million a year, it seems like a lot to me.
Yeah, that's tier 2 quarterback money. You have your Jalen Ramsey, those type of guys who are at the top of the market, right? Resetting it, and the guy from Buffalo, I'm blanking right now.
I know what you're talking about.
Tre'Davious White.
Yeah,
that's the name. There you go. Slipped me for a second. But those type of guys are tier 1. That's not this type of money. But this is easily tier 2 quarterback money. Maybe one of the top 10, 15 in the league. And it surprised me when it came across. I was happy from a UCF standpoint. But I was curious about that side, and you say it's not worth it whatsoever.
No. I don't. I think he works in a system where he has a lot of support, and I think Seattle was getting to that point to where he was getting he was going to be able to have a lot of support from his safeties, and then his other cornerbacks, and even the linebackers kind of dropping back into zone when they were. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Jaguars didn't necessarily have a stellar defense around them last season, and unless they signed somebody else, other people. I guess they did sign Rayshawn Jenkins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with him, but I mean, I haven't heard his name, so I feel like that's kind of speaks to what I'm talking about in a sense.
Yeah, I don't really know about the 1-15 team, turning it around. And also, Jags fans, we might be dumping on you guys a little much, for the people listening in Florida. The good thing is your team has never made any free agency mistakes ever based on their long playoff history. So you guys are good. You guys are, we're going to be proven wrong here.
It's just sad when you go to a game and your fans are cheering literally for the other team.
Well, they lost. Didn't they win the week 1 last year and then lost 15 straight?
I think so. Hold on, I need to look this up.
I'm pretty sure they beat the Colts in week 1, then
I think you're right.
Lost 15 straight. I mean, and they get Trevor Lawrence to go for them. And God, I still can't believe Urban Meyer is going to be a NFL head football coach.
That boggles my mind, but let's see.
I mean, if they mess up Trevor Lawrence, I'm going to be really upset because that guy is probably one of the best quarterback prospects since, I'm trying to think, 8-9 years easily.
Who did they beat? I have all their games and I can't even see the score of when they won. Yeah, okay, it was the Colts, week 1.
15 straight losses. So they also signed Marvin Jones from the Lions, which, I mean, cool. Cool for Jacksonville.
Yeah, good job, guys.
If their over-under is like 2.5, I mean, might smash the under there. Poor Trevor Lawrence, year 1.
Well, it's funny because I said the same thing about, Joe Burrow going to the Bengals. I'm like, poor guy, he's going to the Bengals. And then he started pulling off some, like, literal rookie record-breaking numbers. And then he had to go and tear his ACL. So
yeah, and then the offensive lineman not being there. It turns out that didn't protect him, which Cincinnati signed 0 offensive linemen in free agency, so that's cool.
They figured he wasn't going to be back in time for the season anyway, so it didn't matter.
That's true. That's true. Well, I mean, they're really interesting for the draft because they pick 5th, and there's been a lot of rumors that the 4 quarterbacks are going to go the first 4 picks, which are now Jacksonville, the Jets, which the Jets might then trade Darnold to somebody. I don't know who. Now San Francisco with the 3rd pick. And then the 4th pick's Atlanta, which I'm not exactly sure why everyone is just getting ready to give up on Matt Ryan. Like, Atlanta actually got better last year towards the end of the season. And like we've discussed, the NFC, the bottom of the NFC is wide open right now. So who knows? I mean, I don't know. That one doesn't make much sense. Maybe Atlanta trades out. But then so Cincinnati can then pick the board, basically. And there's been some mocks where they pick Kyle Pitts, the tight end from Florida, who's really good, don't get me wrong, or a wide receiver. And I'm like, if they don't pick the best tackle on the board with the 5th pick, and I'm Joe Burrow, I would call the owner myself and be like, look, I already want to get out of here. Guy. I would riot. It's the Oregon tackle, Penei Sewell, I believe. If they don't pick him, I know a Bengals fan in my life. I mean, if they don't pick him, I will FaceTime him immediately, and I'll be like, you need to go to therapy. We need to talk about this. I apologize. Joe Burrow's going to get injured again.
It's mental injuries.
It really is. So I guess one thing also I wanted to touch on was the wide receiver market because there's been a weird correction with wide receivers recently. Galladay got his money. Will Fuller to the I can't even read the team name. I wrote down here. That's awkward. He got 1 year, 10 million. AJ Green, as we mentioned, 1 year, $6 million. Curtis Samuel from formerly Carolina.
Oh, the Packers.
Okay.
Went to the Packers.
There we go. Thank you. Curtis Samuel, 3 for $34, which was one of the bigger deals. Marvin Jones, we touched on. Corey Davis, we touched on as well, 3 for $37.5, which I like, for whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold. And then the one that really was interesting was Juju Smith-Schuster, who we thought Pittsburgh would not be able to afford whatsoever. And
oh my God, yeah.
He goes back for 1 year for $8 million, and you mentioned to me actually that he was offered the same thing by Kansas City. So we can talk about Juju specifically, or just the wide receiver market in general seems to be really depreciating. And I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I don't know. And maybe because it's one of those things where they're a dime a dozen, right? You can do a lot with a decent wide receiver, but it's also really easy to find decent wide receivers. Obviously, the ones that are bar none the best wide receivers in the league, they get paid their money. But for everybody that kind of falls in that middle ground, like your Jujus, your Galladays, your Will Fullers, hell, even T.Y. Hilton. I still think he's doing pretty decent. Like, they just fall short of that cap because there's so many wide receivers in the league that it kind of just washes out their I don't know, I want to say brand, but that's not the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, their value almost, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think it has something to do with the fact that last year's wide receiver draft class was, it was so highly touted going into the draft, and then it turns out from Justin Jefferson to even like Chase Claypool in the second round, and Ruggs was pretty good on the Raiders. Judy was pretty good in Denver. CeeDee Lamb was awesome in Dallas. You know what I mean? Like all these guys, just immediately. T. Higgins in Cincinnati as well for the Bengals and stuff like that. And then this year, even you look at it and you have Devontae Smith, who was the first wide receiver to win the Heisman since the '90s, and Jamar Chase, who I've already planted my flag on. I want him the best. I think he's gonna be better than Devontae Smith, but that's another debate. And even more wide receivers off of that, Terrence Marshall, those type of people of LSU as well. Like, do you think it's just because there's so many wide receivers coming into the league now as well, like just young guys? Because Justin Jefferson was incredible last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just like there's just so many. There's so many wide receivers, and it's like, and now that a lot of teams are. There's very few teams that are trying to have a 4 wide receiver core, right? They're trying to have 2 really good ones, 1 or 2 really good ones that they can rely on, and then everyone else just kind of like rotating out as their help. So when you have, say we go based off of that number, everybody has 2 really good wide receivers, and so that's 64 players over the 32 teams. I could sit here and easily name 30 players that could be 30 to 40 players that could be a wide receiver 1 on teams type of thing. Not to mention 2s and 3s. So it's just like you said, there's so many coming into the league here and there that it's such a pain in the ass to try to sort through all the really, really good ones. So I think, and I also think that's why, like, I think that's part of the reason why, like, when you do see like either trades or re-signs or something like that, it, like, a lot of the really good receivers tend to stay where they're at. They don't like to move, partially because it's that quarterback connection with whoever may be there, or just because they know the scheme. At the end of the day, like, I think for wide receivers specifically, I feel like that's like one of the more important, obviously other than the quarterback, I feel like that's one of the more important roles to where you need to know the scheme. Running backs, you just get into the backfield, find a fucking hole, and then run, right? But as far as what the game plan is and where you want to go, I feel like wide receiver is a more important role when it comes to that.
Right, especially like you mentioned, I think you had a good point there with the 4 wide receiver connection there, or the set of them is really important with how now route combinations work in the NFL, and who's actually the big outside number 1 guy, who's the slot guy. The slot's been completely taken over, and even too, this probably has a role with it too, is the changing of the tight end position as well. I mean, Travis Kelce is basically a wide receiver. He's not a tight end. He's not used like a tight end traditionally, and someone like Kyle Pitts in the draft is probably going to go in the top 10 of the draft because he's not really a tight end. He's just a bit bigger. And so I wonder if that plays into it as well.
I'm sure it does.
So, one last thing I do want to mention, because, I mean, I guess I'll ask this in a question. Was the Dak Prescott Dallas controversy, drama, whatever, over the last year, the most annoying sports story for you as an NFL fan, not of the Cowboys? Or was it like the third most? Because it was easily in my top 5.
I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. You're going to have to remind me on what exactly happened because I don't remember fully.
Oh, just from the contract negotiations and the rejection of this, and Dallas won't pay him, and then the injury, obviously. Yeah.
It was pretty annoying, and I think because the biggest thing to me is you get paid what you play, right? Like your value to the team is going to come from where when you play the game and when you play a season, right? People can look at his games that he played in the first season. Oh, he was going to have record-breaking numbers. He was going to be the best quarterback in the league. He probably could have won MVP, blah, 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 this and that. Sure, we could say all that. But you know who else was in that same boat? Russell Wilson. He had the best 6-game stretch of his life. We went 4-2 for the first time in like 8 years. It was ridiculous, and it amounted to a marginal season for Russell Wilson. Like sure, he still did good, and the Seahawks still did fairly well over this season. I mean, it wasn't. It sounds a little spoiled now, but it's like, okay, we went to the playoffs. That doesn't mean much, right? Like to a team that's had Russell Wilson now in 9 seasons and has been to the playoffs in 8 of those seasons, just making the playoffs doesn't mean much anymore. It's like saying the Patriots went to the playoffs when they had Tom Brady. It's like, okay, cool. That's an every season thing. So it's like when you have that come along, like, oh, I'm only going to take, X amount of money. I'm not taking anything less than that per year. And you're just like, but you didn't deserve it. you played 5 games, however many he played, and that was it.
Right. I think the most annoying part too for me is that it resolved itself completely in a sensible way. Like we couldn't make fun of Jerry Jones. We couldn't have said Dak should have taken that contract extension a while ago, because 4 years, $160 million sounds like a lot of money, but for a high-level starting quarterback, which Dak Prescott, when he's fully healthy, is very sensible, especially when the new TV money deal is going to kick in a couple of years. Like, that's a very sensible deal. So it's not even fun from like a news thing, like, oh, Jerry Jones overpaid again. So that's why it got annoying to me, is that it just resolved itself in a completely sensible way that didn't need all of the extra ESPN media coverage and here's what actually happened and all of that BS.
Yeah.
But is there anything that we missed that you want to touch on?
I don't think so.
Yeah. There's almost more of a minor free agency, I feel like, just maybe with the cap and stuff like that.
Yeah, like there was a lot of moves that happened, a lot of really good stuff that happened, but it was just kind of like it almost felt under the radar.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
In a sense,
I'm not sure how many teams actually made themselves into playoff contenders or Super Bowl contenders yet. I feel like the draft is going to be a lot more movement, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I completely agree.
So that just means we have to get on here and do a draft either review or preview, before and in the next month. I mean, it's going to be hectic.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see for sure.
So, yep, Lucas, thank you for coming on today, and we will have an NBA trade deadline recap show coming up later this week as well. But yes, Lucas, thank you for coming on today.
Awesome, appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.